this is my first time uploading to YouTube in 10 years, that I find myself in the position of presenting a bicycle that has been a world champion, even before it goes on sale. The new Anthem already shows top-level competition pedigree thanks to Alan Hatherley's rainbow jersey. Today I want us to focus on a few aspects in this video. Technical details to understand why this change in the suspension system and, above all, what benefits it can bring to regular bikers like you or me. Let's discuss travel and geometry. This new Anthem is fully designed for 120mm travel in both the front and rear. It comes equipped with a flip chip, which is a system that those of you who ride enduro or trail are probably already very familiar with. But in cross-country, as of today, it's still not popular, although it might become a bit of a trend. And it's actually a very useful system because by changing the position of a simple bolt, which takes you just a minute or two, you can change the geometry of the bike. In the case of this Anthem, let's say it goes from a very balanced geometry to a slightly more aggressive one. Bajadora market. It's important to mention that modifying this flip chip actually affects the geometry of the bike. In no case does it change the suspension travel. If we strictly compare geometries with other brands, let's say from the mainstream, we'll see that this Anthem V, in that flip chip position with a 67-degree head angle and a 76-degree seat tube angle, the truth is that a standard is really being established, so to speak, starting from that basis. Those who want to be a bit more radical, some other brands that aren't exactly on this chart I'm showing you, well, they go for slacker head angles directly. But let's say this Anthem is within the current standard, which you can compare with these other bikes. I've tested the new Anthem for days using both low and high flip chip positions. And honestly, I definitely prefer the high position because I think it's the most balanced one. We're talking about a 67-degree head angle and a 76-degree seat tube angle.
I've already tested it, not just on this bike, but on many other models.
In this new generation of 120mm mountain bikes, that's like the perfect measurement to have a super balanced bike. Now, it's awesome to have the option to change the geometry whenever you feel like it. Like, I don't know, I'm doing the Mediterranean Epic. The second stage is super technical, and in the end I want something more radical on the descent, just for that second stage. Well, I put it on, set it up, it takes no time at all, and it's good to go. Let's review the components of this model they sent me, which I find particularly interesting. The Advanced Superlight. One, because it combines the highest end frame with the lightest carbon, with components that are a bit more down to earth than what we find in Giant's top range. To start, we have RockShox suspensions, a SID Superlight Plus in the front, and the equivalent RockShox shock in the rear. We have the cockpit, which I think is one of the most interesting creations they've made. Giant is a single piece of carbon that combines the stem and handlebar with rounded shapes. As you can see, it has the bike computer mount directly on the top cap of the headset, so everything is super integrated.
However, it has a standard width of 78 centimeters.
Obviously, you can cut this to fit your measurements. You know you can always do that with carbon. Stem length on size M is 70mm with other sizes available. It features a 9-degree positive angle. But the most interesting thing of all is what Giant has done down here, because as you can see, the bike has cable integration through the head tube, and Giant,
what they've wanted to do is create a shape under the handlebar that allows them to hide and route the cables toward that head tube.
No need for cables to be inside the handlebar. They run internally, but not within the handlebar itself. Because basically what there is a sleeve that guides them, protects them, and can be removed in a second. And although it doesn't change anything regarding the maintenance and handling that needs to be done inside the head tube, it is true that everything related to cable integration in the handlebar is made much easier. I haven't said this before, but the bottom bracket is press fit. We have a seat tube with a 30.9 diameter, a Giant's own dropper post with 140mm of travel, and also a Giant's own saddle. The drivetrain is the GXT T-Type, the new one from SRAM, which is completely wireless. with a 34-tooth single chainring in the front and a 1052 cassette in the back. The brakes are Shimano XT super powerful when braking. In fact, they come with, in quotes, only 2 pistons, both front and rear. You don't need anything else. These brakes are incredibly powerful. And then the wheels, which there's a lot to talk about here because these wheels are from Giant. They're XRC carbon wheels. Both Giant and their wheel brand Cadex are heavily investing in road cycling and now mountain biking, featuring hugeless rim technology. Basically what this means is that the kind of lip that the rim usually has on the inside where the tire would normally rest, well, it doesn't have it. The edge of the rim is completely smooth. And with this, on paper, you achieve, on one hand, that the rims are lighter, and on the other hand, in the specific case of these mountain bike rims, that the outer surface, the external part of the rim, becomes wider. And when it takes a hit, the energy dissipates more effectively, more easily. As I said, this is on paper. And then tires, some Aspen in 240, both front and rear, which, as you know, are the favorite tires of many bikers, both professionals and amateurs. So there's not much more to add about them.
Reduce the free play of the engagement of the free hub. So we increased the number of teeth on the red wheel to 120 teeth. The difficult part is that because there are so many teeth on the red wheel, the size is really small. The difficulty would be achieving very high precision in machining to manufacture it. And the second point is we need extra force to engage the teeth very precisely. So that's why we have a 10-degree hole beaver interface on it.
The key question here is this bike a climber or does it look more like a descender? I would say it's pretty obvious. Looking at the geometry data, and especially when you get on it, you can see that it's a pretty neutral bike, very well balanced.
Okay.
We have to take that into account, especially by taking a look. Hang on, it gets technical. By taking a look at the ridge. Okay?
He has it relatively balanced.
I don't know how the people from Giant see it. These would be more progressive geometries, which we do find in brands like BMC or Mondraker. With those that are so long, they force you to stretch out over the bike, right? With this, what you achieve is that its handling becomes very agile. For me, the word is agility because when you have to take a turn, basically you don't have to move your hips from their place with just a little bit of movement, left, right, forward or back. You always have the bike exactly where you want it. The traction of the rear wheel, as you can see, is very good thanks to the suspension's kinematics. I made a mistake and went wide, but putting it in the middle position works much better. And I would say, just to give you an idea, that its handling really reminds me a lot of a Kobea Ois or a Kronreif Trunkenpuls Matterkofen Scarp from this latest generation. How does it climb? The truth is, the traction of the rear wheel is really strong.
I like it. One
of the commercial features I value most in this new Giant Anthem is the fact that it uses the best carbon from the Taiwanese brand. Exactly the same sheets, the same quality as the frame with which Hazley became world champion a few weeks ago. It's the same one you'll be able to find in all the ranges starting from the entry-level price. So the only thing that changes around the frame is the level of the components. And what this allows the user to do is maybe make an initial investment in an entry-level range because financially they can't go for more. But then they can improve the bike, maybe with a better set of wheels, a better handlebar, a better seat post, gradually upgrading that bike. Over time, with small investments, you can really reach the range that you want or can afford. Because this, compared to other competing brands, what happens is that, since there are different grades of carbon, you buy the entry-level model with the brand's third worst carbon. Let's put it this way, say, and no matter how many good components you put on it, the bike will never end up resembling the top of the line one, neither in weight nor in performance. So, in that sense, Giant, a very positive point. We're talking about 597 grams of weight for the frame in size M. It's a super competitive weight, according to Jayant himself. Compared to the Epic 8 from Specialized, it's quite competitive, according to this chart they've given us. This highly competitive weight, plus their use of the best frame in every range. Not only does it make the highest end model well below 10 kilos, but everything else as well. The entry-level and mid-range models aren't real tanks, like they are with other brands. Because in the end, really, 300 or 400 grams on a bike that's already in the mid-range, instead of weighing 12, it weighs 11.6. I assure you it's something you really notice and appreciate a lot in handling, in performance, climbing, and even in fun. Let's talk now about the suspension system, which is a topic that has generated a lot of murmurs, even some criticism. In previous models, but in this new generation, what we clearly have is a single pivot. Flex in the stays, a single linkage, a very simple system that aims for maximum lightness of the whole setup.
So
I would like to ask you, because riding that bike, the new Anthem, I realized 3 things that I would like to highlight in a positive way. The first one is the traction, the grip of the rear wheel when climbing in a very steep section. I'm surprised about that, considering it's a single pivot, a mono pivot. The second one is the stiffness, the lateral stiffness of the rear triangle. Once again, for a single pivot. And the third one is the capacity to absorb small bumps.
We say in Spain to read.
How did you manage to achieve this with a monopoly?
Well, first off, I have to say it's great to hear you say that, because these were really, there were a lot of priorities with the project, but these were really critical priorities. We wanted to increase, like the way we characterize it is we call it sensitivity or ground mapping. Yes, we wanted to boost that to improve traction and pedaling performance. This helps racers win races, so how do we do it? You know, part of the last couple days we've been telling the story. A lot of it is our FlexPoint Pro suspension and our advanced super light construction technology. It was a long road to get there. We got there, you know, specifically with the suspension. We used all new shocks on all the bikes, so we had custom shocks created as part of this project. We used a bigger shock than most bikes in that category to achieve the counter performance. It's also to do with our patented suspension system. So we have a system that looks like a single pivot. And it resembles many single pivots on the market, but stands out for its use of FlexPoint Pro.
Okay.
And that keeps the frame isolated from the shock, so we can let the shock do its job and tune it really accurately while also increasing pedaling stiffness. Other brands that can't use FlexPoint Pro have to compromise somewhere, which maybe it sounds like you might have experienced that at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is probably a difference in the way that the carbon flexes on the rear section, or how much the carbon flexes.
It's how much it flexes.
Okay.
Our system flexes much less than others with a maximum flex of just 5 millimeters. Whereas something like the Epic will be almost 8 times more than that, closer to 45 millimeters of flex.
That's a lot compared to yours.
Exactly.
It feels more like a multi-link with the rear triangle as a single solid piece.
Yeah.
But it is not. But it feels like...
Exactly, that's the art. And the special aspect of FlexPoint Pro is that we can really create the kind of performance that's very close to a multi-link suspension.
Okay.
But it's lightweight and stiff, as a single pivot should be.
How does the bike go downhill? We've already mentioned its balanced geometry, which is also noticeable in slow downhill corners. Let's say it handles well, no problems, no drama, especially when we get into more medium speed corners. That's probably where it performs best, because it descends with a lot of poise. Be careful not to enter the corner too fast, as it's easy to lose the rear. And maybe the area where it struggles the most is in a straight line at very high speed. That's where you really notice the shorter wheelbase, and that's where you need better skills to control the bike.
Come on, come on.
And now for the kinematics, let's begin.
we can expect the kinematics. Pretty much what progressive single pivots usually deliver. Do you see this sand, which is nothing more than that ability to absorb small bumps at the beginning really well? Then I have to say that the middle part of the shock works amazingly with those mid-sized obstacles, let's put it that way. Small jumps, curbs, and so on. The typical log in the middle of the trail where the bike probably takes the most punishment, whether we're talking about drops or technical riding, which would already be at World Cup level, let's put it that way. Now let's move on to your favorite section, pros and cons, starting with the things I like the most. I've already mentioned it, the fact that commercially speaking, the best frame from the brand is already here. From the starting price, I think it's great because you can gradually upgrade the bike. On the other hand, the geometry is balanced, so the bike is very easy to ride from the very beginning. And you don't need to be a pro when it comes to technique to really get the most out of it. Weight is always a bonus. I'm not sure how much the flip chip is actually going to be used, and if people are really going to be changing positions from one day to the next.
It's still a welcome bonus that adds up. Lastly, there's being able to carry 2 bottle cages.
This is really great, really great, especially in the summer and in race situations, marathons and so on. Things that didn't really work for me. The front position of the bike feels relatively high for a cross-country bike. I did try it with many spacers here. This test unit isn't mine, so obviously I can't cut the fork tube. But regardless of that, you can already tell that the bike is high at the front. In fact, Hatterley himself uses a 2-piece handlebar and stem with a stem that has a pretty strong negative angle. Then there's the fact that you can't choose colors and the fact that you can't customize the components. For example, different crank lengths, different stem lengths, and so on and so forth. It's true that there are different lengths for each of the components as the sizes get bigger. But if a size L wanted 165mm cranks, well, in this case, you couldn't choose that as standard. We just teleported to Taiwan. We're at the global launch event for the new Anthem bike. And here, I'm going to have the chance to try the top-of-the-line model, the one that comes equipped with absolutely the entire RAM ecosystem. Quark power meter, of course, the XXSL and the crown jewel, the Fly Attendant. Let's see how the equipment feels on this bike. Let's take advantage of the fact that I've already done a few laps here testing the bike with the Fly Attendant to give you a bit of my impressions, the differences I've found between the two models. And let it be clear, those of you who follow me already know that I'm not exactly a huge supporter of Fly Attendant. I think it has, like everything, its pros and cons, but in this case, you have to admit that for this bike, it fits. It actually brings a pretty significant improvement. I've always said that in general, the positive things that Fly Attendant can bring are much more noticeable on single pivot bikes. More complex systems, like maybe a Mondraker or a Trek Super Caliber, it's not as noticeable, or the difference isn't as big compared to having Fly Attendant or not having it. But on this type of bikes that have 3 positions, the fact that you don't have to worry about switching between the middle, the open, letting everything be managed, all of it by the electronics. And on top of that, the more technical the terrain is, the better it works. So in this sense, the jump from the model without Attendant to the model with Fly Attendant is very important. It gets even better in certain aspects, like what I mentioned about the rear wheel. The traction when climbing is even better than what I had experienced with the model without Fly Attendant. I suppose the electronics take care of optimizing those points where you have to switch from open to intermediate position, even when you're in climbing sections. Nihon, yes? All right, guys, going down. Whoa, here we go, going down. This is awesome, honestly. Let's say I already like the original bike. It's very balanced when cornering and all that. But once again, here the Fly Attendant adds its touch to make it much more responsive. And in these kinds of turns, the ones where you stick to the ground, the bike does everything for you. Woohoo, it's awesome. Super responsive bike. Honestly, for a 120, it handles downhill very well. And these kinds of trails where the ground, well, it's not super technical, but the ground is rough. The bike has to keep reading, little jump up, little jump down. But honestly, with the Attendant working in open mode, it has an advantage. However, it's twice the price, right? I suppose paying double means double the fun. Let's go. And well, most importantly, who is this bike for? I think there's a target audience that's really clear that this bike would be great for, which is either people who are starting out in mountain biking or people who are trying a full suspension bike for the first time within mountain biking. As I told you, it's super easy to set up because in the end, it's a single pivot. There's not much complication. It's super easy to ride. The learning curve is really small and not steep at all, so you'll get used to the bike very quickly. And on the other hand, I think that in general, any mountain bike, cross-country, full suspension user who doesn't want to rack their brain with too many setups and changing things. And I don't know what else, but wants a bike that works, that they know when they get on it, they're not going to have any problems. And I mean, racking their brain about now adjusting the pressure here, now changing the setup, now the rebound, now I don't know what else. There's the flip chip, but I'm telling you that most likely, once you try the flip chip, if you own this bike, in both positions, you'll probably end up choosing one and leaving it that way forever. So, a simple bike, in the good sense of the word. It goes without saying that it's top-level competition, which also works there, because, well, we've already said it, she already has the rainbow jersey, she's already been world champion, so there's nothing to justify in that sense. Anyway, now it's your turn to give your opinion. Please leave me a comment from 1 to 10. What score would you give? Leave me a big like, that way you help me grow the project. Share this video with all your biker friends, and above all, be very happy.
See you in the next videos. Bye bye.